Hello, crypto world. Welcome to the Chart Historian. My name is Justin, and on this channel, I delve deep into crypto charts, exploring chart structures, fractals, and patterns. So in this video, I'm going to step out beyond the crypto charts and examine the macroeconomic outlook that I believe we are going into. I believe this is an important subject. It touches all of our lives. It affects crypto. So to do that, I am going to paint a picture of an economic future that I believe will unfold in the coming days using the Dow Jones, the 10-year U.S. bond yield, the U.S. dollar index, and the WTI chart or crude oil. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie all these back to a central chart, and that will be the Dow Jones. So let's start with the Dow Jones. It is my belief that the Dow Jones is currently repeating a fractal that took place here, and that is from 2018 to 2020. And this was the run-up to the C19 crash and the crash as well. So once you take this fractal here and copy and paste it over here, now, mind you, I've adjusted this fractal for timing, height, and depth. And the reason why I do that is because every time a fractal repeats, the timing, the height, and the depth will be unique. They will be original. So as you can see, this played out on a much smaller time frame than what it is now playing out. So that is one example of differences in scale. However, it goes beyond that. Like this move up here, for instance, it could have been shorter. It could have been higher. However, despite it being different from what it is, does not negate the overall structure from playing out. So this could have played out like this, for instance. It may have not gone as high. This could have gone deeper than it did here. However, the overall structure should still continue to play out, and that's exactly what we see. So we still have some time. Now, if you were to try to estimate time here, this would be roughly around the end of the year. So this brings up another important point in this subject. Trying to predict timing is not a good idea. So in this video, I have to try to tie it to some time frame. So I am going to use the Dow Jones as the center clock, and because of that, I'm going to tie it to the peak potentially being here. Now, it could be here, it could be here. We don't know. That will be revealed once it materializes. But for this speculative video on timing, we're going to assume it is around here. So this is one fractal that is at play on the Dow Jones. This is not the only fractal at play. In fact, this is the weaker of the two fractals at play on the Dow Jones. Let's zoom further out and examine the bigger one. Okay, so here we are back at the very beginning of the Dow Jones. This began in 1896. If you were to take this entire structure that culminates in this peak here in 1929 and the crash, the ensuing crash that takes place over here, that bottomed out in 1932, I believe it was, if you were to copy and paste it onto this side of the chart, now, mind you, we also have to adjust it for timing, height, and depth, you would see something like this. Now, this is on a month candle. I was on a day candle before. I also have the C19 one here as well, so that's why you see double move downs, and you see this box here. So this entire structure has been at play, this entire fractal has been at play for over 90 years. The bigger these structures are, the more powerful they are. This thing is the king of structures. So since 1829 crash, we have been repeating that same structure that took place at the very beginning up until now. We have not completed the structure yet. So now if we compare that run up to the C19 and the crash of the C19 to the bigger picture, starting here, we see that it is the same pattern. And furthermore, these declining fractals, they're essentially the same crash. So we have this massive crash that is pending for the stock market, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, once in several lifetime experiences. Now let's compare what this is doing to some of these other charts, starting with the 10-year yield on U.S. bonds. So here we have the 10-year yield on the U.S. bonds, and this fractal right here that it is following, this was printed from 1983 to 1987. So it is this structure here that has been playing out. Now what I've done is I've taken the peak here and I've put these two dashed lines. So what I want to do is I want to, assuming that this continues at this current rate, now it could speed up, it could slow down. I also don't know how high this will go or how deep this will go. Timing, height, and depth, they're going to be original as it plays out. I'm going to make an assumption that it's going to continue at this speed. I could be wrong, but for the sake of this video, I have to write something down, so this is as good a guess as any. So what I want to do is transpose these two lines onto the Dow Jones. Okay, so as you can see, I've aligned these two lines with the Dow Jones over here, and as you can see, it does not take place yet. It's in the future. So let's move along and examine the next chart. So the next chart is the US dollar index, or the DXY, and if we zoom out, we can see that it has been following a structure that was printed from 1985 to 2002. Once again, this macro structure has been matched to meet the timing, height, and depth on this side of the chart. And as we can see, we are still not at the peak yet. So the DXY, let's zoom in further. So the DXY is going to be moving up. It already is moving up. Now, it will continue to move up and come to a peak. There is a good chance that this peak right here will be above this one as it originally was. Now, let's play the devil's advocate a little. There's always the possibility, let's zoom out, that it could be doing something similar to this, where there's 1, 2, 3, 4 peaks here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this peak could potentially challenge this peak here, maybe not get too much above it, or maybe not get above it before coming down and then moving back up and doing the other two peaks that are higher up. We'll have to see how that plays out. Also, I don't know the exact timing, height, and depth. I don't know any of that. So this is assuming that it plays out at this current speed and it will go this high. It could be higher, it could be lower. Same holds true of this decline here. So as you can see, the DXY, big picture, is going to be moving up. This is not good for the stock market. It will then have a pretty severe decline. Again, I don't know the exact depth on this. This is just a wild guess. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place some speculative lines on these peaks so we can transpose them to the Dow Jones. So here are those lines, and let's transpose them to the Dow Jones. So here are those three lines from the DXY that indicate the peak, transposed, let me align this, to the Dow Jones over here. As you can see, it is currently still in the future. So now that we have done this, let's move along to the US oil chart. Now here is the WTI US crude oil chart. It is a repetitive structure. I've done a video on this recently. You can find that video here. So we have completed this portion of the structure. So I used this part of the structure to make a guess, a prediction about this part of the structure. Let's zoom into this so we can get a better look. So we have this peak that took place in 2022, and it roughly went up to $128, $29, and then it came down. So this peak is technically higher than this peak right here using this fractal. So there could potentially be a higher peak made than what was currently printed in 2022. However, timing, height, and depth, they're always going to be unique, so there could be some differences in this. It could go higher, it could go lower, but we should expect oil to continue to move up in the coming days and challenge this peak here. Now, you should also be aware of once it crashes, this is not the end of the story. The structure begins all over again, and usually a larger peak is formed, larger in comparison to what took place over here. So we potentially have some stormy days ahead for the oil chart. So let's now take this peak right here. So this is my estimation of where the peak could potentially be. And now let's transpose it onto the Dow Jones chart. Okay, so I have the lines here on the Dow Jones chart. So as you can see, it is also an event that will be in the future. So what I'd like to do now is take a look at the Dow Jones with the fractals that it is following and see how it compares or lines with all these other lines that we have been placing on this chart. Okay, so I have both fractals on here, the C19 run-up and crash, as well as the 1929 run-up and crash on this chart. And these two blue lines here is where the 10-year yield peaks or potentially peaks. So we see that this peak will potentially take place around the same time the Dow Jones potentially peaks. Let's now look at the DXY. DXY first peak potentially occurs around the same time the Dow Jones peaks. The additional peaks will come as the decline begins to take shape. Now, with this decline, this is just guesswork. It may not align with this move up. Maybe it will. I don't know. We'll have to see how that plays out. Next, let's take a look at the oil chart and see how that aligns. So oil potentially will continue to keep rising after the Dow Jones peaks and will peak somewhere in the decline. So now let's put them all on there together. So there we have it. The blue one is the 10-year yield. The green is the dollar. And the red is oil. So let's talk about the conclusion. So potentially in the near future, possibly somewhere near the end of the year, the beginning of the new year, we are going to see some climactic events in the economy. We will see the 10-year yield go into a parabolic move and come to a peak. We will see the US dollar potentially go into another parabolic move and come to a peak, which could be somewhere around here or higher. And we will see oil move up and eventually start moving up fast and come to a peak as well. While all these peaks are being made, the US stock market will be crumbling. Now, I don't know how low this will go, so I have these in line with how much the stock market dropped during the 1929 crash. So it was roughly 89.51%. So that does not mean it's going to crash to this same percentage again, but it is a possibility taken directly from the fractal that it is following. I also think that crypto will most likely peak around the same time that the Dow peaks. Well, folks, I hope you found this video interesting. I don't know how high things will go or how low things can go. These are just educated guesses, but it is based as much as possible in reality. It is taking the speed of today's chart, comparing them to the fractals that they're following, and that is how I came up with the timing. It could be flawed. We'll have to see how it plays out. So what are the odds of this not happening? I would say they're low. There's always a chance it could do something different, but usually the bigger these structures are, the more powerful they are. So these, for the most part, have all been following for a very long time, these fractals. So indeed, there is a economic hurricane approaching. The way I look at it is I can't predict how things will go in the real world, but I do believe following your inner compass that your creator gave you can give you a hunch on what you should do in your personal situation. So do what you need to do to prepare. This is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. Each of these charts means something different. For the 10-year, interest rates are tied to that, mortgage rates. So as it goes up, so do mortgage rates. If you did find this video interesting, it'd be much appreciated if you hit the thumbs up button. And if you did find this interesting and like to see more of this type of technical analysis, think about hitting the subscribe button. This type of technical analysis that I just did is unique. This is something that I have discovered. The strength of this system is it has the capability to project into the future. Well, most standard TA does not have that ability or very limited abilities. There are weaknesses to this. For example, I can't tell you exactly how high or how low something will go or when it will happen, but it is unique TA, and this is the only place you're going to find this. Well, I'm so glad you caught this video. I hope you catch my next one. Have a great day, and bye for now.